What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 94 on this Wednesday, June 26th, 2024, 65 days from the kickoff of the 2024 season for Oklahoma. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you on a Wednesday. ChampU BBQ was over the weekend. Oklahoma has been racking up the commits and the additions since then. We're going to break it all down here on the program for you, as well as look at some other big names that could be on the horizon. Full loaded recruiting show for you on a Wednesday. Do want to make sure off the top, quick programming note. The schedule for this show is going to be kind of wonky the next few weeks. I'm going on vacation for the tail end of next week. So we're going to have one show next week with Tom, James, and myself early in the week, probably the Monday or Tuesday. And then we'll have one show the following week with Collin and myself, probably Thursday or Friday. Then the week after that, it's SEC Media Days, so we're all going to be there. There will be a lot of content coming out of that, but I don't really know when the next formal show will be, so kind of bear with us over the next few weeks until fall camp gets going and get back on a more normal schedule, but a little programming out there off the top. CK, ChampU BBQ, obviously it was a massive week, and we talked about that going in last Friday. We did the show. We're here with you on a Wednesday. A lot to talk about. Recruiting has been very, very busy. We'll start with the news of the day, the most recent news, which was a preferred walk-on pickup just about a little over an hour ago, with Sean Hutton. And we'll talk about kind of the ramifications of it in a minute, but talk about the player. I know you know him very well, just down the road there in Louisville. Talk about the addition here on the PWO front before we get into some of these other, big heavy hitter names and kind of introduce OU fans to him a little bit that may not be totally familiar.
Yeah, it's a pretty impactful get in more ways than one, and I'll get to that here in a second. But As far as Sean Hutton himself, an OU legacy realizing a childhood dream. So his dad is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma, did not play at OU, attended the university, though, graduated from Oklahoma, and then promptly raised Sean Hutton to watch Oklahoma games every single Saturday. And with Oklahoma football being a big part of his childhood, he's obviously been a longtime fan of the program, but I think for Sean, what's really cool about his story is that I think even he would tell you he probably wasn't always convinced that even the consideration of going to play at Oklahoma was going to be available to him. And then he gets the starting job at a program like Louisville High School, is a really good one down here in the state of Texas. Plays a couple of seasons as a starting offensive lineman for the Fighting Farmers. And look, he garnered some natural recruiting attention, as you would, right? He gets up a couple of offers, but then after a camp at OU, that's when things started to pick up here between the two parties. So Sean Hutton works out in front of Oklahoma's coaching staff, in front of Bill Bedenbaugh, has a really good day at camp. He leaves early, though. He has to go do something else. And then he comes to find out, oh, hey, well, Bill Bedenbaugh is looking for you right now. He wants you to come take the visit after the camp. Sean obviously is like, oh, no. So then he gets Bill Bedenbaugh's phone number and calls him. And is like, hey, coach, sorry, I had to leave early. I didn't know you wanted me to take the trip. Again, Sean Hutton not having any idea that this was going to be a thing. Bill explains to him, hey, really like your game, really like who you are. I really think that there's something there here. And so let's try and explore what the future might look like. As time goes on, Sean Hutton has a really good season again at Louisville High School. And the context here, folks, is he's a really quality center prospect that if he were a little bit taller, in my opinion, he would probably have a number of Power 4 offers. Quick, very natural mover along the offensive line of scrimmage, very easily covers ground. And Louisville's offense is kind of based on the wide zone principle. So he's zone scheme, like he can go and climb. He pulls very naturally up front. And then he can play both center and guard. So there's a lot to like about him. He's also very smart, very easily calls out at the line of scrimmage and kind of leads the offensive line. He just checks a lot of boxes as an interior lineman, right? But again, if you were a little bit bigger, he would have probably had a number of offers. I think Bill Bedenbaugh recognized that and got out in front of this one pretty early on. And now you fast forward a few months later, he visits Oklahoma with his best friend, Michael Fasusi, who we're getting ready to talk about. And as Big Mike and Sean are on campus together for a spring practice visit at OU, Oklahoma officially offers Sean Hutton his first Power 4 preferred walk-on opportunity, of course, at the university where his dad attended and the school he grew up being a fan of. It's a whole big deal. Sean talks about it in the story that I wrote. It was literally that day he thought about committing on the spot. But as time goes on, he really tried to vet the process, picked up PWO offers from both Texas and Texas A&M, but it was the Sooners that treated him the best way possible in the way he wanted to be treated. And he just felt like this is the place he wanted to call home. And now Oklahoma gets arguably its top preferred walk-on target in the 2025 cycle. I think it's a really sneaky get for Bill Bedenbaugh. And the last thing I want to say about him, Josh, one thing I noted in the story that I thought was one of the coolest parts of this process, the former OU player comp is kind of Eric Wren, the former walk-on center, who then goes on to become a multi-game starter at Oklahoma. Sean Hutton actually got on the phone with Eric Wren and kind of worked through the process, got Eric's advice, figured out what life was like as a walk-on offensive lineman at OU under Bill Bedenbaugh. And Eric Wren's advice to him was basically, look, there's no difference. You're going to be treated the same. You're always going to have the opportunity to go and compete at the highest level and potentially even find your way back to the NFL. So with Sean learning from Eric Wren what that process looks like and potentially even figuring out how it could carry his career into even greener pastures, very cool to see Eric Wren help Oklahoma land a talented preferred walk-on center. And now he heads to OU himself, to Sean Hutton, and what's going to be a very interesting career to follow.
Absolutely. First off, pro move by you. I dropped out for a minute. I came back. You kept it going. Great concentration.
I covered ground, tried to buy you some time, so I'm glad you're back in. We can keep it rolling here.
So obviously, I'm sure fans probably, they heard Louisville, and you mentioned Michael Fasusi in there, and they're probably making that connection if you don't have any yet of any impact here. They are teammates, obviously, but like you said, they're more than that. They're very close. You mentioned to me the other day when we were at camp, they go back to childhood. And obviously most fans, we talk about him a bunch of times. Michael Fasusi, 5-star offensive tackle, top 30 player in the top 247. What impact could you see this having, if any, on Oklahoma's pursuit of Michael Fasusi now that obviously somebody that he is very close with, a high school teammate who's going to be around him, all the time here coming up this season, obviously if it strings out that long, tries to bring him in and bring him to Oklahoma.
Look, this is someone who, when Sean and Michael first met, I believe their freshman or sophomore year in high school, they immediately clicked. And now you come to today, well, they go to church camps together. They hang out outside of school all the time. At Louisville, in the meeting rooms, they're the two leaders of the offensive front. And look, they would both tell you they're basically best friends. On and off the field, these two have a level of chemistry that's only found by guys who spend a lot of time around each other, both in their sport and then just outside of it, being normal human beings. And so Sean Hutton, in my opinion, is a fascinating layer to the recruitment of Michael Fasusi, because not only are they best friends, but you saw not only Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M offered him a PWO opportunity, knowing this was going to be something that Michael would be examining. Where is Sean Hutton going to play football? And I know that they've talked about what life after high school would look like. Would they get the opportunity to play together? Would they get the opportunity to be roommates together at the college level? And so now with Oklahoma bringing Sean Hutton into the fold at a time where OU is surging with Michael Fasusi, this recruitment now more interesting and maybe even neck and neck than ever before between Texas and Oklahoma, in my opinion. This is significant. Sean Hutton deciding to go to Oklahoma, now you not only have all the built-in advantages that were there, the relationship with Bill Bedenbaugh, the prioritization of Michael Fasusi by almost all of Oklahoma's coaching staff, how well that official visit went around June 14th. Sean Hutton commits to Oklahoma just about a day after Fasusi's official visit to Texas. And now we're really getting murky as this recruitment of a 5-star offensive tackle heads into the back end of the summer here pretty soon. I don't think Michael's going to make a decision until late July, early August. So it's not to say that this one is truly heading down the final stretch. But now we have another data point to examine as we try and figure out, with his recruitment eventually going to wrap up here pretty soon, what does this mean and how will it impact the greater picture for Michael Fasusi? I think it carries a lot of weight, and I think it's another thing that Oklahoma hopes to use in its advantage.
It's a great swing because, like you said, I mean, Sean it's a PWO, but he had other major offers at the PWO level. Like you said, it's really just more of a height thing, maybe holding him back. He's good. I mean, Louisville, he's comes from a heck of a program. So you get probably a player who could maybe be something for you. And it also helps you, maybe land one of the best offensive linemen in the country in this 25 cycle. So great little turn all around for Oklahoma on that front. Elsewhere, so we talked about Jaden O'Neal a bunch. I do want to, we'll talk just a little bit here. Obviously, picked up Jaden O'Neal on Monday. That became official, 2026 quarterback, who we talked about on the show a couple of times. Stud, build a class around, build a program around type of guy. You and I did an instant reaction show on Monday, so don't need to rehash everything there. I recommend people go mosey on over there for 10 minutes and watch that to get our kind of initial thoughts. We kind of broke it all down, but to clean that up a little bit, it's been a couple of days since he committed for you. Just, again, to kind of reiterate what a massive get this is, obviously. This is a guy that you build your 26 class around. We both think the world of him as a player, but he's got that charisma and that leadership, too. The quotes afterward of, embracing the SEC and all that. And he seems to just be a perfect fit in every single way. Obviously, massive get with Jaden O'Neal to kind of clean that up.
Yeah, look, like you mentioned, we got into a lot, not only on the special edition episode that we did on Jaden O'Neal, but I also got to talk about him on the 24/7 Sports recruiting show whenever he committed with us live at 24/7. So there's a ton of content as far as my thoughts about this guy. The last thing I want to mention, though, aside from Jaden O'Neal, you mentioned it, heck of a get in the individual, the charisma, just kind of the natural, cool, calm confidence that he brings to the table, the relationships that he will bring, and how he can help recruit both 2025 and 2026. The only thing I want to add, Josh, though, the ability to get your guy at quarterback in the cycle where you really had to go and figure out who you're going to get. This also helps Oklahoma in the fact that he's not only going to help recruit, but now the staff can really get back to zeroing in on the other recruits still available in 2025 and 2026. The less time you're spending trying to get your quarterback the most important position, that's way more time you get to spend on some of these other elite prospects at other positions across other classifications too. So the time that they now make up, not necessarily having to recruit Jaden O'Neal and then having him in his corner, I think that's very impactful as well. And overall, I think it's going to be very beneficial to the program as they try and finish strong over the summer months.
I'll say it one time more, a broken record, but it just still cracks me up. Lincoln Riley leaves, and then just Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins, Kevin Sperry, now Jaden O'Neal. Yeah. OU quarterback recruiting just fine, to say the least. Other big get on the defensive side of the football. This was just yesterday. Miguel Chavis back on the board with C.J. Nickson, the number one player in the state of Oklahoma, edge down there in Weatherford. Talked about him a few times as well. If you're a regular viewer, listener of the show, you should be pretty familiar with CJ at this point. Obviously, an in-state guy. He committed yesterday. Now, this is a player, number one player in Oklahoma, like we say. He's a top 100 player in the top 247. He's a dual sport athlete. Also plays basketball in high school at Weatherford. He's a freak in a lot of ways. This is a guy that they really wanted to keep in the state. He clearly wanted to stay in the state. Oklahoma State was also in the mix there, but the Sooners land him. Talk about the impact of keeping this guy close to home, and then just kind of, I guess, your understanding or what they kind of see him as a player, and all that good stuff. This is another huge get, obviously. Sometimes I feel like these in-state guys get a little almost devalued in the reaction because it's like almost a given you're going to get them when it's not. This guy's a top 100, top 247 player. It's a big-time get with CJ.
He's the number 74 overall player in the country for us at 24/7 Sports. Like top 75 in America and the number one ranked player in state lines, as you mentioned. This is who you have to keep in state if you're going to win in the SEC. When there's a caliber of talent and athletic profile like that, not too far down the road, you cannot afford to let him leave. Now, obviously, it was down to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, but there were other programs outside of Oklahoma that were going after him. He narrows it down. You can't lose to Oklahoma State. You have to go get the number one player in state at a premium position with that athletic profile to help you win at the point of attack. And that's the other part of your question. In talking to people, he will likely have an opportunity to try and play basketball at Oklahoma. And I want to emphasize try. And I think the mistake that we make sometimes when we talk about these guys is like, oh, what's going to happen? We'll see. Time and again, we've come to understand that process. This was talked
about with Jacoby Johnson once upon a time. Where are we at on that?
Yeah. We just are always like, well, yeah, it's going to take place. Well, let's play it out a little bit before we actually start discussing that process. But he'll have an opportunity to play basketball. I think every opportunity for him, though, is going to come on the defensive side of the ball. I think that this Oklahoma staff sees that guy as a developmental, high upside, potential defensive end edge rusher. There's a lot to like about his game. Obviously, the basketball background leads to some very natural, fluid movement patterns, and his ability to sift through traffic, very natural for him as well. He can get a little physical at the point of attack, which you do like to see sometimes. Guys who play basketball, you don't know how they're going to handle that contact aspect of someone taking on blocks. I think he does embrace that at times, but this is a very raw profile on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's the beauty of it is Oklahoma staff knows they can bring a guy like this in, everything that he brings to the table from a tools perspective, and mold him properly into what they see as a potential elite pass rusher type with just a lot to like in his game. So especially right now at a time where Max Granville heads to Penn State, Smith Arogbo's recruitment at the edge spot is getting very interesting down the stretch between Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech, Washington hovering as well. You had to go get this kind of talent at the edge position. Yeah. And so locking down CJ Nickson right now, huge for OU.
I'll tell you what, I mean, this 2025 defensive line group, it's not as highly touted as the one they just had, which that's a crazy bar with obviously David Stone and Jane Jackson, Okoye, White Gilmore. But this group is another, I mean, we talk about all the time having to stack these groups. You can't just have one and then, that's good enough. And yes, you have to stack them to win the SEC at a high level. We talked about what Trent Wilson is a bunch of times. You bring in Nickson. Kamori Moore is a guy who's, I think, maybe a little undervalued, a little overlooked sometimes because he's been in the can for so long. And then also Alexander Shieldline, who we talked about at camp, was very impressive. Miguel Chavis and Todd Bates are putting together a nice group here to go with the one they just added in 2024. The depth there in the next couple of years, you're liking it. This is another really good defensive line group. I feel like that Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis have put together, with a couple of guys maybe are a tad undervalued in Shieldline and Moore, then a couple of guys are just studs in Wilson and Nickson who are freaks. So,
and I don't think they're done either, but the bottom line is, if you're making that move to the Southeastern Conference, you have to stockpile defensive line talent and depth. And that's the beauty of this group. Like you mentioned, that 2024 class, that's an incredibly high bar to meet. That almost feels like a once in a generation haul, right? Between the amount of talent across the four guys that came in there. But this group incoming, that's a lot of talent to help fill out your defensive line room. Considering where this program is going, there's a lot to like about this current 2025 defensive line haul.
100%. We talked about Emmanuel Choice, Manny Choice, a little bit on the Monday show, but obviously with you here, I want to, know him better than we do. So get your thoughts on him a little bit, and we'll spin that forward to some other receiver impact. But so they bring in Emmanuel Choice. He was the first, ChampU BBQ ad, if you want to term it that way, over the weekend on Sunday. He comes in. We talked about it a bunch, both me and you and Tom and James, the job that Emma Jones has done, continuing to just load up every single cycle with these playmakers, these these guys. They just added Marcus Harris not too long before Choice to go with Grayson Harris and obviously Elijah Thomas. Talk about bringing Choice in a little bit, and I guess kind of your evaluation of what he could possibly be for Oklahoma down the road. Then we'll kind of spin it into some other receiver talk after that.
Yeah, so when I first moved back, one of the spring games that I was first able to hit at that time was the Lancaster spring game. And part of the reason why I went was because of Emmanuel Choice. He was sitting out. He was injured, I think, with a shoulder problem at the time. His only offer was Oklahoma. And so seeing him roam around, I was like, I get it. I see the vision, even though he wasn't even able to necessarily play at that time. You just see this guy in person and you go, yep, makes sense why Emmett Jones would want to offer first, especially with that guy being in what was once Emmett Jones' backyard. Obviously, him being a legend in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And at that spring game, Josh, his only offer was Oklahoma. He didn't even play. But, folks, a cool story. I watched Joey McGuire's son, Garrett McGuire, who's the wide receivers coach at Nebraska. He was there at the Lancaster spring game. He asked Lancaster staff, is that Emmanuel Choice? Yep. Pulls him over and offers him his second ever offer from Nebraska. Again, he was not playing. He had a shoulder sling on, and Nebraska joins Oklahoma on the early offer sheet. Fast forward, though, he commits. I really, really like this get. So 2 things. Number one, I think the beauty of Emmanuel Choice. You look at him, 6'4", 195. I think by the time football season rolls around, he's going to be well into the 200s. I would guess 205. The aspects of Emmanuel Choice's game that need development are what, in my opinion, Emmett Jones can help him develop the most. And that's the beauty, right? Plus, you talk about Schmitty and what he can do. 2 things I want to quickly highlight. I think Emmanuel Choice, he needs to develop specifically at times against press man coverage, and then just adding a little bit more functional play strength, because at 6'4", 195, he's so long, wiry. The frame is impressive, but adding to that big frame is going to be imperative. Emmett Jones can easily show this guy how to embrace press man coverage. That coaching ability is going to take care of Emmanuel Choice. And all of a sudden, we're talking about a very complete 6'4", 195 wide receiver. Then you get him in the weight room and nutrition program with Schmitty. Who knows what this guy is looking like and doing on Saturdays whenever he's a fully polished product. So I love the fact that he can go to Oklahoma and quickly become a very complete wideout prospect. But then on top of that, we've seen that Emmett Jones as a recruiter, look, he's going to stockpile talent, but he also kind of likes to assemble different roles and specific skill sets within his receiving core. So go back to last year, right? You had Ivan Carrion, the big 6'6", 200-plus pounder. That's your big vertical outside threat. You had Zion Kearney as kind of the more complete do-it-all perspective. But then you had some of those interior slot guys that are a little bit more undersized, Zion Raggins, for example, that were just flat-out slot burners. Basically, what I'm trying to say is Emmett Jones has shown you he likes some different body types and skill sets to complement each other in his receiver hauls. All right, let's look at what they have in 2025, right?
Yeah.
Manny Choice is that big dude, right? That big vertical threat, jump ball threat. I love what he does past the 20s. As he develops in between the 20s, he's going to be scary on the outside. Elijah Thomas, to me, is just get that guy the ball. I don't care. You know, he's kind of comparable to Zion Kearney in this class in that he will make something happen if you just get him the ball. And then you've got Grayson Harris, who I think is kind of your gadget slot guy. He has a background playing quarterback, right? So you could maybe do some stuff in the backfield with him in the slot. Marcus Harris, to me, is kind of your true slot receiver type. So there's value there. I like the fact that they're assembling another unique collection of not only talent, but complementary skills. And then you've got another guy we're getting ready to talk about here in a second, still out there. Manny Choice kind of rounds out this receiver group very nicely. And this incoming haul, another really talented one for Emmett Jones, they just fit together very naturally.
Yeah, I love that. The different styles, body types, shape, sizes, all that fitting together. That's what you want. And to
Right.
see him do that in this last class and kind of piecing it together with this class. And the Jaden Gibson comp was kind of brought up on Monday a little bit. And you've seen what Emma Jones has done for him, and the development for him in just the 1 year that he had with him, and going into this second year with him. You feel good about everything with what Emma Jones is doing, the way he's building the roster, developing these guys. He's again, we talked about Jaden O'Neal checking every box. Emma Jones is checking every box as a coach. It's been a home run hire in every sense of it. And it's crazy too, because obviously Jay Nickson was in this group at one point. They lose him, and it's like, okay, we lost a highly touted player who's got offers from everywhere. We'll just pivot, and we're still going to have a crazy deep class. It's pretty amazing what they've done. Like we said, they may not be done. 4 receivers in, and there was some thought, I saw a little bit of, does this mean that they're finished, that they're not going to be after Cortez Mills? We have our guy here. So Cortez Mills, we talked about a little bit before, 4-star wideout from Florida. How do you kind of see this affecting him, or where does Oklahoma kind of sit with him, I guess, moving forward now? Because you saw, I brought this up on Monday as well, you saw some of the guys actively campaigning for Cortez Mills on social media and whatnot. So it's not, they're all trying to load up and all do this thing together. There's no kind of, no, I want all the targets situation. They're trying to load up and make this room as deep as possible. What's kind of your understanding of where Oklahoma sits with Mills now? And is it more likely, less likely? I just kind of paint the full picture, I guess, on where they're at with him now after bringing in Choice.
I don't think more wideouts hurts. I think it helps, because now, like you mentioned, all these voices are coming after Cortez Mills, and it's at a time right now where I think there's a very realistic chance that Oklahoma finds a way to get something done here. Now, look, it's far from decided. The latest I've got on that front, though, is he takes those visits to Clemson and Oklahoma, and even before his OU official visit, I had some sources out in Florida being like, Cortez Mills really likes OU now. Yes, Clemson's his leader, but he's talked a lot about Oklahoma.
Mm.
Then he takes the official visit in mid-June, if I remember correctly, and out of it, it was like, no, they're going to have a chance. And so since then, he's taken an official visit to LSU, and the read I get there is that the Tigers aren't overly optimistic about their standing with him. So it still kind of feels like Clemson and Oklahoma at the top of this race. I think OU remains very optimistic, and the beauty of it now is that Emmett Jones can kind of lock in on this guy as essentially his final target remaining. And he's got all these commits in the class that he's assembled helping him to pursue someone like Cortez Mills. They all want him to come to Oklahoma, and they're making that very clear. I mean, you mentioned it. Marcus Harris commits to Oklahoma, gets it done. They were on the same visit weekend together. I believe they took like a picture together with Emmett Jones in a golf cart. It became a whole thing. Now Marcus Harris is just like, no, I want Cortez to come with me. That's my guy. He needs to come play in this receiver room. So that to me is what's fascinating. Is typically the casual fan would assume, okay, they have this many receivers now.
Sure.
Surely that's a disadvantage. I actually do think it's an advantage, and I think that it's an advantage you're seeing playing out, because these receivers and that receivers coach at OU and Emma Jones, they're all making it known to Cortez Mills. They want him to join the mix as well.
Yeah, again, I think that says something about the guys. You would also think, from an outside casual fan perspective, there might be a little bit of they already got 4 guys there. Why? Yeah, it'd be great to play with all of them, but there's only the classic cliche. There's only one ball, right? I mean, and you talk about the class they just signed and the guys I already have there, but that clearly is not really an issue, and that's a testament to Emmett Jones, a testament to these guys, their mindset of, if I'm good enough and I earn it, I'm going to get the ball. It's going to be fine. And, they're bringing in the right dudes from that perspective. So it'll be fun to keep up with. Emmett Jones has been insane, and has been since he got the job. And so there's no reason to doubt him at this point. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. So obviously we've covered a lot of ground here. We've hit on a number of guys. There's still certainly a number more. It's been a crazy time. You've been all over it to our VIP members or at Sooners Illustrated. I will kind of send you out of here. We'll close on just I guess I'll leave it open-ended in terms of kind of wrapping up ChampU BBQ with any other names or anything else you wanted to bring up before we sign off on this one. Because, again, there was a lot of ground to cover, a lot of names, but we're doing the best we can. What else do you have here from ChampU BBQ to kind of close?
Yeah, so real quick, 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola. Oklahoma visit went very well. I still kind of favor Michigan and Stanford at the top for him, but OU's probably hovering somewhere in the top 3. Still kind of think it's up to that top 2, though, to close it out on him. Christian Jones, Oklahoma made it very known they want him and want him bad as a priority linebacker target. Obviously, Brent Venables and Zach Alley, they want elite backer talent to come to Norman, and I think Christian Jones kind of felt the love. It's going to be tough to pull him from the state of Nebraska, and there are some other big-name programs involved with him. But I think Oklahoma did get a lot done during that trip. Brandon Brown, I've been asked a time or two about him, the Texas defensive tackle commit. Look, I know some folks have varying opinions on this. I still feel like if he's not landing at Texas, LSU would end up being the final choice, even though it has been made apparent to me that Oklahoma really impressed Brandon Brown on that trip. And the last thing I want to say as we get out of here, ChampU BBQ, I think, makes things very interesting for one of the last defensive back targets remaining on the board for Oklahoma in Emmanuel Robinson. So,
yeah,
the Friday of the start of the ChampU BBQ, I believe, is when Emmanuel Robinson announces he's pushing back his decision date. I think it went from June 29th to July the 6th. And I do feel like that was relatively intentional, right? Because Emmanuel Robinson is starting that visit. I'm sure, and again, this is me making an educated guess, I'm sure he's going into that visit going, well, Oklahoma has always been a school that I've admired. I'm about to take this OV. Should probably buy myself some more time to evaluate this program and then look at all of my options. So now Emmanuel Robinson delays his decision. And if you're Oklahoma, that's welcome news, right? Because the visit goes extremely well. That OU staff was on him. Again, that DB haul for OU right now, it's very impressive. And so Emmanuel Robinson being kind of that final outlier, they're making it known that he's who they want to be that safety and be that final take at defensive back. And we'll see how this goes. Arkansas, Oregon, LSU, I believe kind of the other schools still hovering and remaining in the race. But Emmanuel Robinson, a time or two, there's been a lot of positive buzz within his process related to Oklahoma. Now, whether it was Todd Bates, J.P. Lossman, obviously someone like Brandon Hall, one of the best recruiters and developers of safety talent, they were all going after him. And you saw Emmanuel Robinson post some pretty interesting stuff on social media during his trip as well. I just feel like Oklahoma covered a lot of ground here. And I'm not ready to put a crystal ball pick in. I know a lot of people will ask, what kind of predictions may I enter coming out of that official visit weekend? And I'm hanging around here as Josh tries to hop back into the show one more time. But while I'm not ready to put a prediction in for someone like Emmanuel Robinson, I'm probably right on the verge of feeling that like that's a justified move for one of the top safety targets remaining on the board for Oklahoma. Welcome back to the show again, my friend.
Man, what is happening today? We better get out of here while I'm here. Appreciate you as always. Again, we'll be back early part of next week. I'm thinking probably Tuesday for Tom, James, and myself to wrap up some other stuff heading into July. This is it. This is our final show of June, I think. I believe, without looking at the calendar. So we're moving quickly here. And while that SEC Media Day is coming up here before too long, Collin and I will reconvene. It's going to be a couple weeks before Collin and I get back together, but we'll have a lot of recruiting stuff in a couple of weeks to kind of catch up on. We'll also preview SEC Media Days a little bit. All 4 of us are going to be there, by the way. So we're going to have lots of coverage and content coming out of Oklahoma's first real SEC thing, which is going to be cool in a couple of weeks. So look forward to that. Collin, appreciate you as always. Safe travels. We did the show on Wednesday because you're heading out of town for a 7-on-7 event tomorrow. So safe travels on that front. Say hello to our friends in College Station. It's wild times over there right now on the baseball front. So send them our best.
I was about to say I got to leave because the UIL State 7-on-7 tournament in the state of Texas is going on in College Station. And I would say for the first time in a very long time, I cannot wait to go to College Station, Texas, and hear what they have to say out there in that part of the state. I think there may be a thing or two to talk about with my friends out there in College Station.
It's wild times out there. Very, very deja vu for us here in Oklahoma from a few years ago. We'll put it that way. That's it for now. We'll be back next week. Be sure to subscribe to Sooners Illustrated, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. All that helps tremendously. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway. See you guys right back here next week, next time on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.